On September 11th, 2001, I was a New York City firefighter. It was only my second week on the job as a firefighter in Manhattan, and I was still trying to wrap my head around the routine. September 11th, 2001 started like any other day, but it turned into something out of a nightmare, something that's haunted me ever since. For those of you who are too young to remember that day, it was the day that the Twin Towers in New York City were attacked by terrorists. It was a day I will never forget for the rest of my life. I had been through my fair share of trauma before as a combat veteran, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to witness that morning. The sun was shining, the sky was clear. It was a beautiful day that would soon turn into a day of unspeakable horror. I was at the firehouse, going through the usual drills with the guys, when the alarm came in. A plane had hit one of the towers at the World Trade Center. We thought it was some freak accident, maybe a small private plane or something. But when we turned on the TV and saw the smoking tower, we knew this was no accident. We rushed to the scene, sirens blaring, adrenaline pumping. The streets were chaos, people running everywhere, smoke and debris filling the air. I remember looking up at the tower, seeing the flames and the smoke billowing out. It was like something out of a movie, but it was real, man, so damn real. We were among the first responders on the scene, and I'll never forget the feeling in my gut as we entered that building. It was dark, the air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning. We could hear people crying, screaming, the sound of chaos echoing through the halls. We started evacuating people, guiding them down the stairwells to safety. People were scared, confused, covered in soot and ash. I tried to stay focused, to keep my cool, but it was like sensory overload, the noise, the heat, the fear. It was suffocating, like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. And then, just as we were getting people out, we felt it, a massive rumble, a deafening roar. The second tower had been hit. The building shook, and I thought the whole damn thing was gonna come down on us. My heart was pounding, my mind racing, as we tried to get out of there. But the way out was blocked. Debris was falling, the stairwells were clogged with panicked people. It felt like time had slowed down, like every second was an eternity. We were trapped, man, and I thought that was it. I thought I was gonna die right there, crushed beneath the weight of the chaos. But somehow, we made it out. We kept pushing forward, fighting through the smoke and the fear. And when we finally emerged from that building, covered in ash and sweat, I felt a mix of relief and disbelief. I looked back at the towers, both of them now engulfed in flames, and my heart sank. The rest of the day was a blur. We continued to respond, to do whatever we could to help. The city was in chaos, the streets filled with a mixture of emergency personnel and civilians trying to escape the nightmare. I saw things that day, man, things I can't even put into words. People covered in dust, the sound of sirens wailing, the smell of destruction hanging heavy in the air. And as the towers fell, one by one, I felt a profound sense of loss. The magnitude of the tragedy was beyond comprehension, and I struggled to process it all. The sky turned dark, the sun hidden behind a thick cloud of smoke and debris. It was like the world had turned upside down. In the days and weeks that followed, I continued to respond to the aftermath, to the pile of rubble that had once been the World Trade Center. The devastation was indescribable, a graveyard of steel and concrete, a stark reminder of the lives that had been lost. I had seen my fair share of trauma as a combat veteran, but this was different. This was a whole new level of horror, a senseless act of violence that had shattered a city and a nation. I struggled with survivor's guilt, with the memories of what I had witnessed. It was like a wound that never fully healed, a scar that would always be a part of me. But in the midst of the darkness, there was also resilience and unity. People came together, first responders and civilians alike, to support one another, to rebuild and heal. And as the years have passed, I've found strength in the bonds forged in the crucible of that day. I'll never forget September 11th, 2001. It's a chapter of my life that's been etched into my soul, a day that's shaped who I am and how I view the world. It's a reminder of the fragility of life, the power of resilience, and the importance of standing together in the face of adversity. And though the scars may still ache, they also serve as a testament to the strength that can emerge from the darkest of times.
I can't even begin to describe the most horrific day of my career in law enforcement. As a police officer, I thought I had seen my fair share of darkness, but nothing could have prepared me for the nightmare that awaited me on that domestic dispute call. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio, giving me the address and describing the situation. Domestic disputes were sadly not uncommon in our line of work, but this call had a sense of urgency that sent shivers down my spine. I raced to the scene, and on my way there my mind racing through all the possible scenarios. When I arrived at the address, the scene was chaotic. There was a lot of tension. I could hear the sound of raised voices once I pulled up. I stepped out of my patrol car, scanning the surroundings as I approached the front door. My partner was right behind me. Both of us were ready for whatever might come our way. As I entered the house, the noise hit me like a wall. Shouting, crying, the home was filled with anger and fear. I quickly assessed the situation. A couple was in the middle of a heated argument with their children huddled in a corner. When I looked at the children, their eyes were filled with terror. I motioned for my partner to talk to the adults, hoping to de-escalate the situation and get a better understanding of what was happening. But before I could even process what was unfolding, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. My heart stopped as I turned towards the window, my eyes widening in disbelief. The suspect, his face twisted in madness, was dropping his children out of the window one by one. My instincts kicked in, and I sprinted towards the window, my mind racing to comprehend what was happening. I could hear my partner shouting, the children's screams piercing the air as they fell, their small bodies crashing to the ground below. It was like a scene from a nightmare, a horror that was unfolding before my eyes. I reached the window just as the last child was dropped. My heart ached as I saw the lifeless bodies of those innocent souls, their lives stolen in a moment of unimaginable horror. I wanted to scream, to cry out in rage and anguish, but I had a job to do. I radioed for backup and emergency medical services, my voice shaking as I tried to convey the urgency of the situation. The suspect stood there emotionless, turned towards me with his empty eyes. I could see the darkness that had consumed him, the void that had driven him to commit such a heinous act. I kept my distance, my hand resting on my service weapon, ready for whatever might happen next. Backup arrived, and together we subdued the suspect, his resistance feeble in the face of the devastation he had wrought. EMS worked on the children, but it was clear that there was no saving them. The weight of their loss hung heavy in the air, a suffocating reminder of the evil that had unfolded in that room. As I stepped away from the scene, my heart heavy and my mind reeling, I couldn't shake the images that were seared into my memory. The children's faces, their screams, the sense of helplessness, it was a trauma that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The community mourned the loss of those innocent lives. The shock and grief were palpable, a collective pain that echoed through the streets. The suspect was taken into custody, his actions forever staining the fabric of our city. As a police officer, I've seen the darkest aspects of humanity, but that day took the cake. The loss of those children, their lives stolen by their own father, left an indelible mark on my soul. It's a tragedy that has fueled my determination to seek justice for the vulnerable, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to ensure that the darkness is never allowed to overcome the light. Now, as a family court judge, I take domestic disputes very seriously.
It was a routine evening, just another day on the job as a police officer. Little did I know, this shift would take an unexpected turn that would send my heart racing and my adrenaline pumping. I was cruising down the main road, keeping an eye out for any signs of trouble, when I noticed a car swerving erratically. I followed protocol and flicked on my lights, signaling for the vehicle to pull over. As I approached the car, my training kicked in: keep a watchful eye, be prepared for anything. I approached the driver's side, my hand resting on the grip of my holster. The window rolled down, revealing a man in his early 40s, a nervous expression on his face. I greeted him with a firm but friendly tone, asking for his license and registration. He fumbled for his documents, his hands shaking slightly. As I took the papers, I couldn't help but notice the tension in the air. Something felt off, the way his eyes darted around, the way he was avoiding direct eye contact. I asked him if he had been drinking, and he seemed to hesitate before answering, his voice unsteady. I asked him to step out of the car, my gut telling me that something wasn't right. He complied, albeit reluctantly, and I could see a bead of sweat forming on his forehead. My heart was racing as I assessed the situation, my senses on high alert. I started to conduct a field sobriety test, asking him to follow my finger with his eyes. But before I could finish, his demeanor shifted. His eyes turned wild, his body tensed, and in the blink of an eye, he sprinted back towards his car. Panic surged through me as I shouted for him to stop, my heart pounding in my chest. I lunged after him, my training taking over as I tried to reach the car door before he did. But he was faster, desperation fueling his movements. He swung the door open and leaped into the driver's seat, his hands fumbling for the keys. My mind raced, every fiber of my being telling me that I had to stop him. I sprinted towards the car, my heart pounding in my ears. I reached for the door, trying to yank it open before he could start the engine. But before I could react, the engine roared to life, and the car lurched forward. I felt a surge of panic as the vehicle sped towards me, my heart racing, my training kicking in. In that split second, I dove to the side, the car narrowly missing me as it sped past. My heart was still pounding, my mind a whirlwind of adrenaline and fear. I watched as the car sped away, tires screeching on the pavement. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, back up on its way. I radioed in the suspect's description and the direction he was headed, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The dispatcher confirmed that units were en route, and I took a moment to catch my breath, my heart gradually slowing down. Backup arrived on the scene, and we initiated a pursuit. Sirens blared, lights flashing as we chased the suspect through the city streets. It was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I focused on the road ahead. We followed him for what felt like an eternity, weaving through traffic, the tension in the air palpable. The chase finally came to an end as the suspect's car crashed into a barrier, smoke billowing from the wreckage. I approached the scene cautiously, my gun drawn, my heart still racing from the intensity of the pursuit. The suspect was apprehended, his wild eyes now filled with defeat. As I looked back on that night, I couldn't help but reflect on the split-second decisions that had defined the situation. The narrow escape, the pursuit, the moment when everything hung in the balance. It was a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the job, the need to be prepared for anything, to trust my instincts, and to rely on the training that had been drilled into me. That routine traffic stop had turned into a heart-pounding experience. It was a night that would stay with me, a reminder of the risks and rewards that came with wearing the badge. And as I continued my patrol, the city lights painting streaks of color across the pavement, I knew that every call, every encounter, could hold the potential for the unexpected. Thank you for listening. Stay spooked.